Music Theory 1, Part 3 by Odessa Balan. Earlier in this series, we introduced clefs and how to interpret them. You learned about the circle of fourths and the circle of fifths. Now it's time to understand how the measure is organized in written music. Reviewing time signatures. You may remember from Part 1 in this series, we talked about identifying the time signature. At the very beginning of a piece of music, the two numbers listed as a fraction are called the time signature. Once we can identify the time signature, we need to understand what it means for understanding the rhythms of the notes in each measure. In the time signature, the top number tells you how many counts or beats are in every measure, and the bottom number tells you what kind of note gets one count or beat. So in 4/4, there are 4 counts or beats per measure, and the quarter note is the type of note receiving 1 count or beat. In 2/4, there are 2 counts per measure, and a quarter note gets 1 count. In 3/4, there are 3 counts per measure, and a quarter note gets 1 count. Organizing the measure. In 4/4, the notes in each measure must add up to 4 beats. The quarter note equals 1 beat. So in each measure, you could have 1 whole note, 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, and 8 eighth notes. And it could sound like this. In 3/4, the notes in each measure must add up to 3 beats. The quarter note equals 1 beat. So in each measure, you could have 1 dotted half, 3 quarter notes, and 6 eighth notes. And it would sound like this. In 2/4, the notes in each measure must add up to 2 beats. The quarter note equals 1 beat. So in each measure, you can have 1 half note, 2 quarter notes, and 4 eighth notes. And it would sound like this. You can also have a combination of the different kinds of notes in each measure, as long as they add up to the number of beats listed as the top number of the time signature. In 2/4, you could have in 4/4, you could have and in 3/4, you could have Time signature quiz. Please pause the video so that you can name the missing time signature at the beginning of each line. Be sure to add up the notes in each measure so that you can see how many quarter note beats there are for the top number of each time signature. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Reviewing note values. Understanding note values helps us to account for the full number of beats per measure. 1 whole note equals 2 half notes. 1 half note equals 2 quarter notes. 1 quarter note equals 2 eighth notes. And 1 eighth note equals 2 16th notes. Understanding note values. When we look at a piece of music, we need to look at the type of note that is 1 beat long and divide the measure according to that kind of note. The time signature in this example is 4/4, so we are counting the 4 quarter note beats per measure. The quarter notes listed at the top of this example are there to show how the different kinds of notes fit into the quarter note beats, and the beats are numbered at the bottom. And it sounds like this. The next time signature is 3/4, so we are counting 3 quarter note beats per measure. The quarter notes listed at the top of this example are there to show how the different kinds of notes fit into each quarter note beat, and the beats are numbered at the bottom. And it sounds like this. Now the time signature is 2/4, so we are counting the 2 quarter note beats per measure. The quarter notes listed at the top of this example are there to show how the different kinds of notes fit into each quarter note beat, and the beats are numbered at the bottom. And it sounds like this. Pop quiz. Please pause the video so you can add one note at each place marked with an asterisk to complete each measure. Remember to check each time signature and add up all the beats per measure. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Beamed notes. Eighth notes, 16th notes, and 32nd notes, etc. are beamed together according to the beats within the time signature. It is not uncommon to see these kinds of notes beamed like this. Each time we divide a note by 2, like 1/8 note into 2 16th notes, we add a flag to a single note or beam for 2 or more notes together. More beamed notes. We can also combine different kinds of beamed notes like this. We have an 1/8 and 2 16ths. We have a 16th, 1/8, and 16th. And we have an 1/8 and 4 32nds. When we beam notes within the measure, we need to allow the beats to be identified easily. In the first example in 4/4, with a quarter note, 4/8 notes beamed together, and then 2/8 notes beamed together, does not show clearly beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. Therefore, the measure next to that is much more clear. In the next example in 4/4, it is very confusing how all of these notes are beamed together, especially the notes beamed over the bar line, which is a definite no-no. The line directly below that line is the same music, but this time the beams make much more sense and each beat can be seen clearly. Note stem direction. There are rules about which way the stem should go, up or down, when writing music. The middle line is the dividing line. All the notes below the middle line should have the stems going up, and all the notes above the middle line should have the stems going down. But on the middle line, the stems could go either way. However, it is important to put the stems of all the notes beamed together in the same direction as the first note in the sequence. As this first example shows, do not make beamed stems in different directions like in the second example. Beaming practice. Please take this time to pause the video to practice beaming notes according to the time signature. This can be done using any kind of notebook paper. Hint: if a note doesn't have a flag, it does not get beamed. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. Notice how the beaming of notes helps to organize the measure, helping the player find each beat. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Rests. A rest in music is when the player stops playing for a specific amount of time or beats. Each kind of note has a corresponding rest. We divide the whole rest like we divide the whole note. The chart on the bottom left shows each note with its corresponding rest. And the rhythm pyramid rest chart on the bottom right shows how the whole rest is divided by each of the other types of rests. Rests and time signatures. The whole rest is used when the whole measure is silent. The whole rest is used not only in 4/4 but also in 3/4 and 2/4 time signatures to show a rest for the entire measure. Here are examples of rests in each of these time signatures. Organizing rests in measures. Measures are organized by the time signature and rhythm of the song. It is important to make sure the notes or rests in each measure equal the amount of beats allotted by the time signature. Here are some examples in 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. The first example is in 2/4 and it sounds like this. The second example is in 3/4 and it sounds like this. The third example is in 4/4 and it sounds like this. Pop quiz. Please pause the video and see if you can add one rest at each place marked with an asterisk to complete each measure. Remember to check each time signature and add up all the beats per measure. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Please review what we've learned. The organization of beats, rhythms, beamed notes, and rests in written music helps the player understand how to perform the piece. Keeping the beats of each measure visible to the player helps him or her avoid making mistakes while learning and performing the music. Thank you for viewing. Feel free to go back through this video to review what you've learned. Stay tuned for more Theory with Odessa.